Thank you, Mark. And thanks everybody for coming here today. How could we not be here? I don't know about you, but it's inspiring to be in such a beautiful place, and really inspiring to be here for the launch of Climate Parents. And it's a little odd to be standing up on stage here talking to all of you, because this is one of the most accomplished and effective and passionate and dedicated and experienced and successful group of climate activists that I've had the pleasure to talk to. So please give yourselves a round of applause. But I just want to talk for a few minutes, but I wanted to just ask a quick question, because I'm fascinated to know how you all are looking at climate change right now. And so raise your hands if you think we're going to make it. So raise your hands, not yet, hold on, I'll specify the question. Yeah. So raise your hands if you think that we're going to reduce emissions fast enough to keep warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2050. This is the time when you raise your hands. 2 degrees? Okay. Danny and one other person. Danny and Mia. And Ian.
2050, maybe, but.
And Mark. And Kiara. You know, it's interesting to hear that, because I think that the act of being a parent is a profound act of optimism, really, when you think about it. And so I wanted to talk today about what I think are the clash between optimism and pessimism, and how optimism and pessimism can merge together. And I just wanted to explore what that means for all of us, because I was talking with Felix a little earlier, and I think a lot of us feel this conflict between what we see as possible and what we fear is going to be unavoidable. And how do we live in the world wrestling with these two things at the same time? So I want to talk about optimism. I want to talk a little bit about pessimism. And I'd like to reveal for you the title of Mark Hertsgaard's next book, which even he doesn't know yet. So, for those of you who didn't raise your hands, you know, we all know why, right? If you look at the floods that are happening in Boulder County right now, I just came back from the Jersey Shore where I grew up and saw hundreds of houses that were destroyed, the fire that ripped through Yosemite. We get evidence every week now, all around the world, of a climate that's already destabilizing. It's happening 20 years, 30 years, 40 years faster than we thought, at rates of severity that are much worse than what we thought. And you compare that to what's happening in Congress and the general posture and climate that we see in Sacramento, in Washington, D.C., and the ability of our political leaders to respond to that. And the gap between what we need to do and what we're currently doing seems huge, right at the same time that we're learning about what actually needs to be done. So any bit of pessimism is completely justified. It's completely justified. And at the same time, I think we also know that that's not the whole story, right? Folks here in California are seeing how the installment rates of solar are skyrocketing. And we're seeing how the costs of clean energy are plummeting. In Southern California, a bunch of environmental groups just defeated a natural gas plant solely on price, because solar came in cheaper.
Wow.
Right? In Michigan, we defeated a proposed coal plant solely on price, because wind and solar both came in cheaper than new coal. There's a $2 billion coal plant, the Spiritwood coal plant in South Dakota. It was just completed 3 years ago. It's mothballed. It's not even running, because wind is cheaper. They don't want to run it. It's more expensive to run a brand new coal plant in South Dakota than it is to tap into wind. And on Friday, here's a quote. I wanted to read this to you, because it's revolutionary. And it's like nothing that you've ever heard before. And it's only the beginning of what the future will look like. So this comes from the CEO of a division of Xcel Energy. This Xcel in Colorado is the utility that is the utility for 2/3 of customers in Colorado. And late last week, this company, Excel, appealed to the PUC within Colorado, asking the Public Utilities Commission to build more solar. And this is what he said. Based on generation needs, the most reliable and most cost-effective resources happen to be solar and wind. We are not taking on solar because we have to. We're not taking on solar because we've been forced to. We're not taking on solar because we've been brought to court to do so. We're taking on solar and wind because it's the most cost-effective and it's the most economical. So that's in 2013, right? So the trends are only going to get better. And I wanted to say these things because as much as I think pessimism is justified and understandable and in many ways intellectually honest and correct, and even though I think it's vital that we have a really clear eye on the challenge that's in front of us, that we don't delude ourselves to thinking that we can meet this challenge easily, we don't kid ourselves to think that massive changes are necessary. I think it's important to, whether you want to call it pessimism or realism, to be really clear about what we have to do. But I also think that that pessimism permeates our culture. Almost every article that you read or every news story that you see online or on TV or on the radio about climate change is dark, it's depressing, it's gloomy, and almost every time, not every time, but almost every time, you leave it feeling worse about yourselves and worse about our future. And that kind of atmosphere is limiting, and we have to fight it. And I think it's the most important thing that we can do. I think it's the most important thing that we can do, is to defeat that pessimism, because it limits our ambition. It limits the imagination of policymakers. It puts a ceiling on what elected officials think that they can accomplish. It puts a ceiling on what corporate officials are willing to reach for. And it even makes funders more conservative. It makes NGOs more timid and more conservative. And it's a cap on our ambition. So when you're a parent, you think about your kids and the future that they're going to grow up in. And almost every time you're imagining a wonderful, beautiful world that they're going to grow up in, except when you think about climate. And so what I would like to invite us to do is to imagine the world that our kids are going to grow up in when we win and when we're successful. So I'm going to pick on Brant Olson. Brant is a longtime friend, longtime campaigner. His little boy Oscar is around here somewhere. Right here. There he is. All right. My wife and I, our little kids, couldn't be here today because of a very important 4-year-old soccer match. But so Oscar, 4 and a couple months, right? Hi, Oscar. Okay, so Oscar, by the time he's graduating college, it'll be 2030. 100% of our power should be coming from clean energy. No more mercury from coal plants, no more coal ash, no more fracking for natural gas plants, no more soot coming from coal plants, no more smog coming from fossil fuel plants, no more mountaintop removal, none of it. This is totally within our reach. If in 2013 it's cheaper to build solar and it's cheaper to go to wind, why should we have any fossil fuels? In the next 17 years, we can get all of this out of our grid. We can have a 100% clean electric grid before Oscar graduates from college. And so Mark's new book will be a blatant and defiant ripoff of what Tom Brokaw wrote. Because that's the greatest generation. That's the generation that'll produce power that's safe, secure, and sustainable, and will never go back. We'll never go back. This is the society, this generation, us too. We're going to change the way in which the world is powered. It's totally within our reach, and we'll never go back. And so I was thrilled to come here today, because I think that the work that Climate Parents does is vital in this. Both in projecting optimism, but bringing our sense of what's possible and our moral authority as parents of beautiful kids who demand and have a right to live into that world. So thank you all for coming today. Thank you for doing what you're going to be doing for climate parents, even though you don't know it yet. And back to Ian. Thank you.